Hello everyone, today on World Kitchen, I'm going to be showing you how to make my meatloaf recipe. It's a recipe that I've perfected over the last 9 years, and I think that Alfred would agree that it's pretty close to perfect. At least, he should. Every family has their own recipe, of course, so you can choose to follow mine or just use it as a guide. You can take my recipe, twist it all around and make it your own, but let's go ahead and get to it. The first thing we need to cover is the ingredients that go into our meatloaf. Now, there are going to be two different sets of ingredients. One is going to be for the meatloaf, the other is going to be for the sauce that goes on top of the meatloaf. Now, for the meatloaf, we have to have ground beef, Italian sausage, 2 eggs, lightly beaten, onions, 3 slices of bread, a half a cup of milk, tomato sauce, breadcrumbs, oregano, garlic powder, butter, pepper. So that's what we're going to have in our meat part of our meatloaf. Now for the sauce, we are going to use white vinegar, Dijon mustard, tomato sauce, Worcester sauce, ketchup, and brown sugar. This all sounds kind of crazy, but I promise that it comes together in a really nice, harmonious, meaty loaf that you're gonna love. Next, we're gonna go over how to make it. So the first thing we're gonna do is melt our butter over medium-high heat in a pan on the stove. Once that's melted, we're going to dump our onions into the pan, and we're gonna saute these onions until they're translucent, so about 5 minutes. So while your onions are cooking, we're gonna add our half a cup of milk into a mixing bowl. Then we're gonna take the edges off of our bread. You don't want the edges on there because it doesn't taste good. So then we're just going to wet each side of the bread with milk just to get it a little wet. Wring it if you need to. And then add that to a separate mixing bowl. Once you've got your bread in a separate bowl, you're going to take your Italian sausage and just break it up with your hands and add it to the bowl. You're going to do the exact same thing with your ground beef. Just use your hands to sort of break it up into large chunks. Now that we have our meat mixture inside of our bowl, we're going to add our eggs. Make sure your eggs are lightly beaten. Add your eggs to the mixture. Add half the can of tomato sauce. And then add all the breadcrumbs. Once we've added all those ingredients, this is really gross, but the best way to mix anything usually is using your own 2 hands. So just make sure your hands are clean and use your hands to knead the mixture together, but make sure that you don't overmix it. So just make sure it's kneaded until everything is sort of combined. Now, at this point, your onions should be done. So you're gonna add them to the mixture, to your meat mixture. And then you're going to mix them in with a wooden spoon because it's hot. And just mix it in until you don't see very many onions sticking to the side anymore. That's how you know the onions are incorporated well. we are going to add our spices to our meat mixture. So add your oregano, your garlic powder. Forgot to mention this, but you should also add paprika, this much. Add paprika to your mixture, and then add your black pepper. And just use your wooden spoon to mix it together. Until all the spices are nice and mostly evenly incorporated. Now that our meat mixture is all mixed up and perfect, we're going to take that and we're going to drop it on a sheet of parchment paper. And basically what I like to do is I like to take the parchment paper and use the parchment paper to form this into a loaf. You can use your hands a little if you'd like, but just make sure that it's sort of even. Do whatever you need to kind of make it perfect. And it should be uniform pretty much across the whole thing and kind of sort of tapered at the ends, because obviously that's going to be a little bit smaller. And you can press down with your hands in order to make it wide. Trust me, it's going to make quite a bit of meatloaf, but you can always save the leftovers for meatloaf sandwiches, which is usually what we do. So this is our meatloaf. Now that our meatloaf is actually made into a meatloaf, we are going to combine the rest of our ingredients to make the sauce that goes on top of the meatloaf. And I always like to make extra because it's nice to have some to put on the meatloaf once it is done cooking and you're eating. So we're going to combine our cup of ketchup, brown sugar, our Dijon mustard, our Worcester sauce, white vinegar, and the rest of our tomato sauce together in this bowl. Now that we have all the ingredients for our sauce in the bowl, we're just going to whisk it all together until it's really well incorporated. And you have to make sure that you whisk this until there's no more grittiness to the sugar that you've added to the sauce. Once there's no more grittiness, the sauce is ready. When you are mixing your sauce up together, when you're whisking it together, you need to whisk until the sugar that you've added is no longer gritty. Once the sugar is no longer gritty, your sauce is ready and you can move on to the next step. But if your sauce is still gritty from the sugar that you've added, then it's not done. Once your sauce is made, and you need to transfer your meatloaf, your raw meatloaf, onto a cookie tray. Make sure you line your tray with parchment paper so you don't ruin your cookie tray. A lot of people cook it in loaf pans. I don't. Because in loaf pans, I feel like the meatloaf stays super moist on the side, but not in a good way. It's kind of gross and looks gray, and I don't like that. If you cook it on a cookie tray, if you bake your meatloaf on a cookie tray, then the heat has more opportunity to go on the sides. So what I do is I just put it on a cookie tray, I take my sauce, and I drizzle my sauce over the top, like that. And then I kind of spread it out to make sure that all the sides get covered with some sauce. It doesn't need to be drenched necessarily. It can be if you want it to be. It's your meatloaf after all, but it doesn't need to be drenched. So just make sure all the sides are covered. If you need to add more, then add more. And once you've gotten all your sides covered with your sauce, what you're going to do is you're going to then pull it up, the original parchment paper up. You're going to pull it up and you're going to basically sort of wrap it like this. that will create like a little pocket that'll keep your meatloaf together. And then you're going to bake it. And if you need to, which is what I'm going to do, is you can attach toothpicks to the paper to hold it in place. So yes, you can use toothpicks to sort of affix the paper to your meatloaf. And it'll just kind of hold it in place so that the paper doesn't come out. All right, so our meatloaf is formed, it is sauced, and now we're gonna put it in the oven to bake for 1 hour and 15 minutes at 365 degrees Fahrenheit. After 1 hour and 15 minutes, pull the meatloaf out, let it sit for 10 minutes, and then slice it up. Serve it with vegetables or fried potatoes, and enjoy.